Hello and welcome back to Thrive, where in this short video I will show you how to survive by only eating iron. Restocyanin is the only protein that allows you to turn iron into ATP, and there is no equivalent organelle. Unlike hydrogen sulfide organelles and proteins, restocyanin does not require you to turn glucose into energy. It simply directly converts iron into ATP. Now, on the upside, that means that you don't need to have stuff like metabolosomes, for example, in order to turn glucose into energy or go through other mediums. That's just directly iron into ATP. Now, while restocyanin is more efficient than just straight up old cytoplasm, it is a bit less efficient than a metabolosome. So let's say we got a metabolosome that's 8 energy production, but if we replace that, it's down to 5. So already it's a bit less efficient than your average sort of protein to get energy. And going on to, let's say you are a eukaryotic cell with a nucleus, it is very difficult to maintain a nucleus with just restocyanin. So it would take, let's see, this much. It would take 1, 2, 3, 4. It would take 8 restocyanin to sustain just a nucleus. That's not even including any flagellum, which would require more, and all that. Meanwhile, metabolosome only requires 4. And that's just a metabolosome. That's not even thinking about organelles, which there's no iron organelle. So with this, you still need pretty much the same amount of space, but it'd be 2 mitochondria for the same effect. Now, one of the most important aspects of choosing an iron build is what patch you are going to be on. Almost every patch has a little bit of iron in it. And as you can see, just about everything, like this one doesn't have it, and this one doesn't have it, but everything else has at least a little bit. Now, most of these patches that have like 3% or so, you're not gonna survive off that. Unless you're like 1 restocyanin hex, you're not going to be able to survive on just 3%. It'll be very difficult. So, there are 3 environments where you can reasonably survive on iron. Now there's the volcanic vent where you first start off, though it's just barely, because it's at about 5%, but very likely you'll want to combine that intake with something else, like glucose or hydrogen sulfide, in order to survive, grow bigger, all that. The underwater cave is another excellent spot. It has quite a bit less hydrogen sulfide than down here, but it has a full percentage more iron, so it is a very good spot in comparison to other areas if you're going to survive on iron. Now, the absolute best place to survive on iron is the ice shelf, hands down. 12% iron. That is 3 times as much as you find in the vents. That is 2 times as much as you will find in the underwater cave. It is insane. It's more than, let's see, what would it be? Yeah, it's more than 4 times as much as what you will find in most other environments. Like, this is really, if you're going to survive on iron and iron alone, this is the place to do it. Now the issue is, you start off in the volcanic vent. So okay, you have a bit of iron, and you know what, you can survive on these bits of iron, so it'll get a bit hairy right here, but then it's fine. But then you get to the epipelagic, and right here, you will notice 0% iron. If you're relying on iron alone to get through these areas, you're not going to survive this zone. Unless you get insanely lucky, you're just gonna straight up die before you can even get to the ice shelf. So my recommendation for a starter cell is basically the same thing I did for my plant build, because you're going to have a sort of similar strategy of make a beeline up to the surface, but don't stop the place with the most sunlight, just keep going to the ice shelf. So what you'll want to do is probably add a couple metabolosomes in 1 generation. The cell will survive perfectly fine. Then you will move on over to this patch, and here you can add a flagellum, and then you should have enough mutation points left over to get a chemoreceptor. And all of that will be Perfectly fine, good energy mix there. You want this thing to be looking for glucose, because at this point you might as well just have metabolizomes take advantage of the abundant glucose in the environment. Now, as you keep moving up into the different patches, it is tempting to modify your cell. However, this is a very efficient little cell, and it can do the job perfectly fine and not use unnecessary energy upkeep. As you keep going, you get through here, get to the ice shelf. Now, once you're at the ice shelf, that's when you want to start moving things around. Now, at this point, you can't just simply get rid of both of the metabolizomes and be perfectly fine. If you get rid of them, you're not going to be producing enough energy. So what you'll want to do is add in some rustacyanin slowly over generations. That's 1 generation, 2 generations. Yeah, at this point, it is capable of surviving on its own. So this is just a little iron cell. It can survive perfectly fine out in the wild. One interesting thing to note about the ice shelf biome is that it does actually have environmental hazards. It's the only patch that has environmental hazards other than the little, like, poison things. And it's these little ice spikes. Because if you run into them, you actually take a little bit of damage. But it's not much. That doesn't really bother you. But as you can see, there is just a ton of iron all around. And one crucial thing if you're doing an iron build is make sure that you have a membrane that allows you to consume items. Because you can consume little iron blocks and it will almost always fill up your iron entirely. And it is very easy to survive off of this. Just look how many chunks there are. One thing I forgot to do was to change the chemoreceptor to look for iron. Now, with how abundant it is in this biome, you likely won't run out of it. You won't go out in the middle of nowhere and die of starvation. But chemoreceptor only takes a tiny bit of energy, so it's a good investment regardless. And as with just about anything in this game, you can survive up to 20 generations, beat the game, just like this. This little cell, it's pretty efficient, it gets the job done. However, let's say you want to go to the multicellular stage, that you want to get some of these membrane-bound organelles. Well, for that you'll require a nucleus, and a nucleus is massive, and it's a massive energy investment. So, over the next few generations, what you'll want to do is add in more and more rustacyanins. Then once you have enough, just barely enough here, I'm gonna just move this up, and probably just move this here, that there. And here you have a pretty decent eukaryotic iron-eating cell. Now, the downside of being eukaryotic is that you will eat through energy fast. As you can see, whenever I'm moving, this iron is getting eaten by like 0.1 per second. So you can't be that far from sources of iron. But an upside of being eukaryotic is that it's very easy to engulf stuff, because most auto-generated cells don't have nucleuses. So you can easily outsize them. With subsequent generations, you might want to add on a few other organelles. Vacuoles can be very useful, just to store more iron, since you'll eat it up so fast. However, everything costs osmoregulation, and you'll need to add even more rustacyanin if you're going to survive solely off of it. And if you want to go into multicellular, you want a binding agent and a signaling agent. The signaling agent isn't strictly necessary, but it allows you to tell other cells what to do, so it makes it a whole lot easier. And binding together into a multicellular, well, cell can be a bit difficult when you eat iron because of the energy requirement. Oh, come on. There we go, come on. Okay, now. You won't be able to hunt other cells for sustenance. These guys have a bit of iron on them. Okay, come on, there we go. And be a little bit of a predator cell while also eating on iron. So a couple more generations down the road, got a signaling protein or whatever it's called. binding together a bunch of these guys. And because of the 2 vacuoles we've got on each of them, I can store a massive amount of iron to just keep going. One thing you might want to invest in instead of binding agents and signaling agents is actually more chemoreceptors, because you've already got the one to search for iron. But what will be difficult to find in the environment will be ammonia and phosphate. Now you can make ammonia through nitrogen-fixing plastids, but that requires ATP and an iron-eating cell that is already in very, very short supply. At this point, the best thing you can do just to try to get more energy without losing a ton more speed from having more restocyanin is just to have a double membrane. It only gives you about 3-ish. Yeah, it gives you about 3-ish reduction to osmoregulation cost, but every little bit helps. So that's pretty much it. That's how you survive as an iron-eating cell in Thrive. Hope this helped, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.